My name is Cameron Draper. I am the Senior Director of TAMS and Global Support here at SafeBreach. This is our customer office hours session. Today, we're going to be talking about Validate and Propagate, how they're better together. You, as SafeBreach customers, may have heard about Propagate, and we'll be talking to everyone from design partners that are going to attend today to people that I just haven't actually even touched Propagate and are used to Validate, but the way that they fit together is the story that we're going to tell you today. Just for some organizational bits, just this type of a session are done quarterly for both customers and prospects. This one's geared just towards customers today. So we will take questions as we go through our slide deck at the end. So if you can hold your questions to the end or put them in chat, we'll make sure to get to them. There will be some other information that we'll give you along the way. So if you have anything that you want to ask, just go ahead and raise your hand or put it in chat and we'll get to it by the end. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand off to our sales engineering manager, Francisco Najera, who will take it from here. And we look forward to having a great session with you guys today. Francisco.
All righty, thank you. Hope everyone's cool today. It's been incredibly hot recently, but yeah, so we're going to be talking about Validate and Propagate. Feel free to drop in any questions as we go along in the chat. So quick agenda, right? Talk about the better together, why the two solutions are really well positioned to give you a broader view of your security posture. We're going to hear from Hassan Duman, TripAdvisor, a design partner, and we're going to hear about their experiences with Propagate, as well as how that is enhancing what they're doing in their own internal security program. And then we'll have a quick demo, and of course some live Q&A. So with that, let's get started. So Validate, as you all know it, is our core BAS function. So core BAS capabilities designed primarily to test your security controls, to do that with an incredible amount of depth, to be as realistic as possible around the techniques that real-world adversaries are leveraging. Validate provides the ability to not just implement those actions at scale in your environment, but also to measure the responses from your security defenses in a scalable manner, bringing that visibility back into the console, which allows you to then track and trend that over time. Propagate, which is our attack path validation / automated pen testing capability, is meant to help validate attack paths, primarily based on identity paths that leverage human mistakes, both at the end user level, things like password reuse or potentially password violations, or just simply, silliness that can occur, but also on a human admin side where maybe configurations that are being implemented aren't really always rolled out as intended. And so adversaries obviously can take advantage of that. And as you'll see, and we move forward, that identity-based attack paths are something that attackers are using very effectively, and they're all over the news. So Scatter Spider, attacking all UK retailers, and now setting their eyes on like US insurance organizations. So by combining the two and leveraging the same framework, the same platform that Validate provides, Propagate is able to identify the attack paths very quickly and then provide the evidence of the security controls through the integrations that already exist in your platform to then show how the attacker can be detected, potentially prevented from being able to pivot over to critical systems. All of this is then rolled up into actionable insights to understand, from all the simulations, different hosts that are discovered and potentially pivoted over to what what were the what were the initial steps that were taken. So from a simple port scan and port and services that may be running where they shouldn't be or shouldn't be allowed to communicate because you've got some kind of microsegmentation or local policies in place, but clearly not applied uniformly, to password reuse or unencrypted passwords being stored potentially in a browser, et cetera. And so the platform will call that out in a in a easy format for you to quickly start to dive in and take action. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Hassan Duman, who's from TripAdvisor. Hassan is a principal security consultant with TripAdvisor for some thoughts on his role there and his experiences so far. Hassan?
Thank you, Francisco. And hey, everyone, Hassan here. Just a little bit information about me. I've been conducting pen testing and acting as a consultant for about 6 years now, 2.5 of which has been spent in TripAdvisor. I was initially onboarded at TripAdvisor to conduct red teaming assessments, purple teaming assessments, and pen testings of web applications and APIs and so on. So, as a part of our purple teaming engagements, we were looking for a solution to automatize the whole process. And then as we were evaluating vendors, we decided to go with SafeBreach about a year and a half ago. And then once we onboarded SafeBreach, it was initially just for Validate. And we were getting really good results from Validate, actually. So what happened is that we were testing our security mechanisms, we were testing our EDRs, CMs, some DNS security tools, firewalls, anything in between. And SafeBreach has been delivering some really good results. And then as a pen tester or a red teamer, my job was to act as a bridge between SafeBreach and our SOC team to make sure that whatever attacks that we are missing has been mitigated or new rules were written up. And then we built a whole purple teaming process around SafeBreach Validate. However, as we were doing this purple teaming engagements, there was this huge question that was asked by the SOC or the leadership, and that was, okay, our security mechanisms are working great. We are improving them. We're coming up with new rules and whatnot. But what happens if our security controls fails, or they are disabled, or they are blinded? For example, threat actors really love to blind EDRs and conduct actions on the compromised endpoint. So what can we do about it? Like, we know that SafeBreach Validate at this point has been a huge help in terms of getting our security mechanisms up to date. Our policy is great, but what is going to happen if a threat actor manages to bypass our defense mechanisms? So actually, by that time, when we were asking that question, SafeBreach came up with Propagate and then asked us to be their partners partners while developing the Propagate, and we happily take it on the offer. And what happened was that SafeBreach Propagate has been done wonders answering that question as to what happens when our defense mechanisms or security solutions fail. So we used Validate for coming up with new rules and detection techniques for the attacks. However, once we onboarded Propagate as well, now we're seeing the real picture as to what happens when our security mechanisms were blindsided, or they were disabled, or rendered useless otherwise. And on that part, Propagate has the ability to bypass your EDRs, bypass some other security mechanisms, whatever you have on your endpoint. And then it's very aware in terms of network reconnaissance, as well as Active Directory reconnaissance and permission enumerating. So these were the features that we were looking for. Our question was what happens when a threat actor gets in our environment and then our security mechanisms are not able to detect it. What can they do within that environment? So Propagate does a really good job of enumerating permissions, conducting reconnaissance on the network, and then going above and beyond actually exploiting systems and propagating or laterally moving into another endpoints and servers. So just as a real life example, what we have come up with Propagate has been really useful. And on one occasion, we thought that our Active Directory group policies were working perfectly, and it was, all servers were enrolled in certain group policies. However, once SafeBreach Propagate was able to hack into our environment and then install itself, the agent, on another host, we realized that some of the servers were missing some group policies. Some group policies were not getting inherited correctly. And on another occasion, we had an issue with credential guard, and because of this, SafeBreach was able to bypass LSAS protection and dump the credentials, and then use those credentials to propagate into other machines. So, we had to investigate it and then found out that credential guard wasn't implemented correctly within our environment because of a virtualization issue. So, we fixed it and then run propagate again to confirm that it is actually working. So, to cut things short, Validate does a really good job of validating our security mechanisms and security tools that they're doing their job as advertised. And then Propagate gives us the upper hand when they fail or otherwise they have gaps in them.
Yeah, thank you, Hassan. That's great. Just a couple of observations. So I guess it because of how you use Validate, right? And most customers use it the same way with representative systems. The controls that you're testing can be, validated for policies, et cetera. But how those policies are then getting deployed across like the entirety of your systems isn't always perfect and uniform. And being able to have something like Propagate, do reconnaissance across the network, identify new systems to attempt to target. I think combining the two then begins to really provide you with a closer view of what that posture might be, and especially given that maybe systems are off the network at times when policies are being applied, et cetera. How does how does Propagate fit into your overall pen testing responsibilities?
So, from a pen testing responsibilities perspective, it really gives us, it really reduces our workload in terms of endpoint and network pen testing. So, TripAdvisor pen testing team is not a huge one. There's only 2 of us as for the pen testing team. And what happens is that we have lots of ground to cover, right? We have APIs, web applications, we have Active Directory environment, we have cloud to pen test. So what happens with SafeBreach Propagate is that SafeBreach Propagate takes the huge chunk of our workload and then it just executes it automatically within our Active Directory environment so that we can focus on the other areas. And Propagate, the functionalities of the Propagate is the exact same actions that we would do in a real life pen test. So Propagate does a really good job of emulating actual threat actors or pen testers, but from a reconnaissance perspective, as well as an exploitation and lateral movement perspective.
That's great. That's awesome. Want to hear that. Definitely help enhance what you're able to do with your team. Great. Well, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions for Hassan, please feel free to just drop them in the chat. We'll get to them, as we can. I'll continue on here. We're going to go through a technical overview of Propagate, and again, maybe the reasons why, if they're not clear just yet, if you've been exposed to some of the initial information about why Propagate. We're going to dive deeper into it, both from the why, but as well as the how. So, with that, I'm going to pass it on to Shelley and to Tomer to continue the presentation.
Thank you very much, Francisco. I hope you hear me well. I apologize if there is a background noise. I cannot control it. So why does we chose to focus on identity-based propagation? Why does it matter? Because most of the attacks, in the wild attacks, are using identity-related breaches, and the techniques that we are using are among the top 10 MITRE techniques used by real adversaries. Can we skip the slide? Okay, thank you. In our world, the process to propagate is consists of 3 steps. One is the credential access. It's like getting access to a key. And the keys in our world can be password, it can be a password hash, NTLM, or other format. It can be a token or a ticket from the DC. And once we get it, we try to unlock the lock. And the lock in our case is an open port. If there is a service listening behind this port, we can try the key. And if it's the right key, we can unlock the key. And actually, in our world, we can get remote code execution. And from that point, we can install our propagator, which is a temporary simulator that we will use while the scenario is running. And after the scenario ended, we will delete it and we'll have the same environment, clean environment as we used before the test. Click, please. Okay, so we are going to go over in details about the 7 steps of the scenario, which includes more than 50 attacks. So before we start, let's go a little bit about technical details. Skip. No, this is the former. Yeah, so Propagate is working from a Windows simulator. You just need one simulator, and that's it. All the other attacks are agentless attack against real machines in production environments. And we are currently supporting Windows to Windows propagation, and we are starting to work on other operating system. And the scope of the propagation will be limited by you, the customer, to the Class C subnets that you would like to propagate to. As I said, just one simulator, very easy. Next. We'll see it later on when Shelly will demonstrate the live system. Once we'll start with anti-system permission, which are higher permission, like admin permission. But once we'll install the propagator, we'll use the permissions that we achieved during the credential access phase that I'm going to present later on. So if we got like weak user credentials, we'll use them. If we got administrator credentials, we'll use them. Okay, so we are not attacking, try to propagate to machines that you are not allowed us to do that, or to machines that already installed with a simulator or propagator. All the attacks are in serial mode, but there are some exceptions to that. We have the long-term attacks that run all the time in parallel to the entire time of the test. I will present it later on. We are working with steps. All the attacks that are included in one step will work, and once they will finish, we'll move to the next phase and the next phase. And I'm going to introduce the phases one by one. But the most important part of this slide is that, contrary to Validate, we are going to run with best results if we have a real user logged in a production environment. And I will explain later on how safe it is and how our solution is enterprise grade. We worked a lot and invested a lot, not just on the propagation, also on the safety. Click this. So the first phase is the reconnaissance phase, and it helps us to answer some questions. Can you go back to the first step? For example, which OS is it? Which EDR is installed? What are the applications installed? What are the settings? As Hassan from TripAdvisor said, they add a misconfigured credential guard. So we are looking at credential guards and Microsoft Labs and PPL, and I explain about it later on. Which user are logged in? What is the password policy? And etc. And all of this data is gathered, and we launch the attacks based on the data that we gathered. So, for example, if we see that Chrome is installed, we will try to, in the next step, to harvest credentials from Chrome. But if it's not installed, we want to try this attack. Okay, let's move on. So the second step is the credential harvesting. Actually, it's like two steps, step 2 and 3. And this is the UI. First, you can define the allow or block list of IPs, and we want to communicate with the machines that we are not allowed to. And once what you see in the square is the credential harvesting categories. So we have 4 categories: browsers, local password managers, operating system, which like includes registry, memory, file system, and other attacks, and domain controller attacks. Let's move on. So you can see that we are allowing you to choose which attack will be executed and which attack won't. The next phase is once we gather credentials, we need to validate that they are the correct credentials. Because let's say for example, say that we got credentials from Chrome browser to a third-party site. We would like to check if this password were used by the user as their Windows credentials. So we have 2 methods of credential validation, and we are able to check this without causing an account lock. I will explain how this can be done. Okay, so let's move on. Please click. Oh, okay. So after we validate the credentials, we have a method to do that without increasing the bad password count, which is used to monitor the amount of passwords entered in a row, which are not valid passwords. So once this reach the threshold of defined by the policy of bad password count, the account will be locked. So we will stop. We will query the DC for the amount, and we won't cause any account locks. We'll also ask you by the UI if you prefer to define a different threshold, and we'll take the minimum out of the 2. After we validate the password and we have a validated password, or of course a hash or a ticket or a token, we will do the lateral movement itself over this protocol, SMB, RDP, WMI, or WinRM. You can also choose, for example, RDP might cause if the user is already connected with a session to the RDP and the machine is a Windows agent and not a server. Usually Windows only allow one session, so it might disconnect the user while running the attack for a few minutes. So we are allowing you, providing you all the data, and you can decide if you want to do it or not. Let's move on. Finally, we have the last propagation step, which uses the user token and without any credential can propagate. So even if we didn't get any credentials, we can still steal from Elsas the user token. It can bypass credential guard, it can bypass PPL, which is a protected process, which usually Mimikatz and all of the other tools cannot do it. We can bypass EDR and the operating system mitigation and extract this token and propagate using this user token. Let's move on. After we understood all of the logic of this scenario, let's speak a little bit about the 3 components of the long term. So you can define how much time the scenario will run. It can be for 1 minute, it can be for 24 hours. In this time, we will every password or hash or token or ticket that we will capture during the test, we will upload it in real time. Only if you allow it, of course. It's an optional option to our Cracker, which is an AWS self-developed process by a service by SafeBreach. We'll upload in a safe manner the credential, end-to-end encryption, and all of that. And as you can see, this is a real case where we were able to crack the hash. It's an NTLM hash of a customer in 12 minutes. We have even faster cracking examples. And once we'll crack it, we'll send the cracked password, of course, in a safe manner to the scenario, and we'll use it in the next propagation. Let's move on. We also have a network-based attacks. So we call it responder. It's a man-in-the-middle attack. We are waiting for an opportunity to capture broadcast packets from different machines in the network, and of course only in the allow list and different protocols. And we have the ability to capture NTLM SSP or V2 and upload them to the Cracker. And we also can use them to relay. So we can use NTLM relay over from HTTP relay to SMB. And if the machine are not configured well with SMB signing, we can get remote code execution over those machines. Let's move on. And the last piece of the puzzle is the login interception. We have the ability to capture the clear text password that you type in the Windows login text box. So we can wait for the user to lock the machine. We don't need a restart or a restart or even a log off, just a lock of the machine. And once the user type his password, we can capture it in clear text. We can also are considering adding a UI checkbox to allow us to lock the machine just one time. So the user will be have to type the password, but this is not a mandatory option. Okay, I think that's it. And I'm waiting for your question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just to emphasize, I think something that Tomer alluded to earlier, right? Propagate runs best on live user systems, and so unlike Validate that you normally run on dedicated attack infrastructure, we're talking about running on live user systems, and as such, we've designed a scenario to have a limited number of attacks that are very focused and specific, including EDR bypasses, so as to not create these pop-ups that you would normally get on a Validate scenario, right? Because the idea there is to really focus on the identities for the propagation. Just as a quick poll before we go into the demo here with Shelly, how many of you are there have experienced propagating your own environment today? Getting it running either on your own or with the help of your TAM. Yes. I'm seeing some hands up. I'm not sure how to interpret them. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Deidre. Okay, yes. So yeah, if you guys are curious, obviously, ask any questions that you might have. The whole idea of these sessions here is just to get you more exposed and to answer any technical questions that that you might have around this specific capability. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Shelly, but again, feel free to continue to chime in with questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Francisco, if you mind giving me access for a second. Thank you. Okay, so again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm gonna kind of show you how everything Tomer talked about actually translates into action. You can hear me, right, Francisco? Just give me like a little nod and you can see my screen. That's great. So what happens here is this is your usual scenario page. This hasn't been emphasized enough, but Propagate is like an inherent part of the console. So there are no additional installations necessary. You don't need to install a dedicated simulator. This is your SafeBreach Validate infrastructure, SafeBreach Validate simulators that are going to be used in this test. So we're going to click on this attack path validation scenario, which is a part of our new Propagate category. Once we enter, this is not the usual SafeBreach scenario studio, but this is a dedicated wizard, which some of you, as I understood now, have probably already seen. This is going to show us step by step how we're going to configure this test according to your policies, requirements, and restrictions. So first, we're going to select our entry point. This is a SafeBreach simulator, the same simulator you run your BAS tests on. And what we're going to see here is that there is no active session. This is exactly what Francisco had referred to earlier. If there is no user logged into this host, either physically or like RDP to it, in some sort of a session. So we're going to see this little banner here and this recommendation. This is really the best way to simulate what would happen in your actual environment if someone got if some host got compromised. So we really highly recommend this for your for the optimal environment for this test. So once we select our patient zero simulator, we're going to define the scope of the test. So by default, it's going to be the patient zero's class C subnet, as you can see, but we can add any other subnet that we want. It could be like a class C block out of a larger subnet, like a class B. For example, let's say we want to add another, let's say this is a class B network. So we can do like something else, and really anything that you'd like to add. Let's say you have some sort of servers that you know that are sensitive and you know you do not want to propagate to for any reason. You can always add the scope here, and we will not propagate to these hosts. Of course, it can be within the existing allow list ranges. It has to be in some sort for this to logically work. So let's say this is the range we do not want to propagate to. Then we're going to set up the duration. What will happen is that the steps that Tomer talked about, they're all going to run in a kind of recurring way, fetching for events, fetching for simulations, and they'll run until the timeout has been reached. So let's say you start the test with a reconnaissance, you reach the lateral movement. So it's going to run recurringly to fetch new events. Maybe things have changed in the network. A host has been connected or disconnected. Someone has logged in, etc. So we're going to, let's say, define this as 3 hours. We could do it for days or minutes. Then we define the scope, and we continue to the techniques and the attacks. So here we can see that exactly like Tomer said, we can select the source that we want to view or not view, like use or not use. We can select the validation method if we want to validate with a domain or locally, and the lateral movement. Let's say, as Tomer mentioned, this might disconnect, so I don't want to select the RDP, but I do want to select the kernel exploitation as I'm willing to take the risk. Then we're going to move to restrictions. This is how we avoid lockout. So let's say you know that your company's policy is 5 attempts, so you're going to enter 5, and we're going to stop after 4 attempts, like for authenticating with a domain. After we've defined the content, the restrictions, and the scope, we're going to move on to the last step before running the test. We're going to review it. We're going to see what the entry point simulator as IP is, make sure that we've selected the correct one, can view the allowed ranges, and of course the attacks. And if we want to drill down and see exactly what we're going to run, so we're able to enter this attack pop-up just like the playbook. We can view the attack's actions and the methods that it's going to use or its classifications for MITRE techniques and what's going to cover. These attacks cannot be duplicated nor created a scenario from because they are built a bit different. They forward the parameters, like Tomer explained, from one another, and they are not your ordinary BAS attacks. Next, we're going to name our test. And for those of you who have or don't have the password cracker enabled, it's going to be shown here. Next, we're going to run the test. As you run the test, we'll be provided this screen. This is the running page that you well know from its BAS, or I want to say previous view. This is the propagate map. It is also running. It'll be updated in a few seconds. But until it runs, it could take a couple of hours. So we're going to head straight to analyzing a previous test that we have run here. So we can see here that the data is a bit different, unlike Validate, which, oh, my bad. Unlike Validate, which has like the amount of simulations or the security posture score, Propagate has different metrics. We can see that we have the amount of compromised hosts and findings found in the test along its severity. How critical is it? Next, we're going to drill into findings. So findings are a new way to view the achievements of the test. They're very drilled down into the data. Unlike simulation results that are more on how the security controls have behaved, the findings are actually going to tell you the story of what occurred during the test. So if we can go to the summary before we drill down, we'll be able to see this aggregation. Again, different widgets, different data from the validate test summary. We can see how many hosts were discovered and compromised. We can see how many credentials were used for lateral movement, or in how many credentials were harvested in general. You can see the severity of all of the findings that we're soon going to go over, and other metadata. Here we can see what hosts were compromised, what security controls were involved, and how many successful attacks were there from every test step. Next, we're going to drill down into the findings. So in the findings, we're going to be able to see what users were collected during a certain test and from what host. We're going to be able to see the account lockout and every different configurations that we found out on the host that we compromised. Next, in the credential access, would be able to see how many credentials were found from different hosts, how many types of credentials, are there hashes, are there clear text. We'd be able to see which one of them, exactly like Tomer explained, are valid. We're going to validate them and see. So here we can see that there are 2 admin passwords that were found and validated out of a few dozens of attacks. So we can see these are the credentials. This is the host that we retrieved it from. And this is the criticality of this finding. That's a 9. And then when we move to the lateral movement, we'd be able to see that one clear text password has been used for lateral movement. We can see that it was used, the 2 used were used on 7 hosts, meaning that we reused the password. It means that it is configured on a lot of hosts in the network. This might be like something that you should try and look at how it's configured and why is it on high privileges in so many hosts. And the remote code execution and our agent, the propagator, Tomer referenced sooner, which is a lightweight version of the simulator, has been successfully installed on 7 machines. Again, we can see that what machines, what host names it has been installed on, and of course, what credentials was used for lateral movement. So this tells the entire story. It shows you the kind of missing links in your environment, and of course, it translates directly into remediation in the report. There is a dedicated report for Propagate, which I'm not sure we're going to have time to go over today, but of course that you can find it in the reports page immediately. We'd be able to see, last but not least, a summary of the test in the attack map. The attack map that is now running in the running page that I showed you earlier is also available in this replay mode for just looking into the data, understanding what are the hosts, what are their IPs, what ports were open and how they were compromised. You have the aggregated data as well here, all the metadata for the test. And of course, if you still want to go to the good old-fashioned simulations, you can select view simulations and you'd be forwarded to the relevant simulations for this specific lateral movement attack. You'd be able to see exactly how it was done, by what attack techniques. Here you can see the port scan, you can see the RDP, you can see the pass the hash, you can see the extraction of the relevant password policy that ensured this attack. So I think that this finalizes this live demo. Thank you for listening. Francisco, you can take the lead.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to note, Shelley, that if you guys missed it, but as Shelley was clicking in through, there's some post-infection attacks that are running, which are actually directly from Validate. So those are Validate attacks that are running after we've been able to remote code execute and install our propagator onto the remote systems. And so being able to extract password policies from that system and then show the security controls potentially detecting or missing that activity is interesting. And I think, if you look at where this could lead, is obviously many of you have been investing time in developing custom attacks for, say, detection engineering purposes, and maybe you want to run that custom attack on a system that you've been able to propagate to, right? So now you're, again, combining propagate with validate better together. And that's the whole idea with the single platform, the single integration framework to allow for that capability. So with that, I'm going to now pass it over to Tal Rotem from our product team to talk about what's coming next.
Okay, thanks, Francisco, and thanks a lot, Shelley, for presenting the way we run Propagate today. One of the things that I would be focusing on is how we move from propagation within a single subnet into what we call multi-hop, where we're focusing on multiple subnets in a more classic scenario, I would say, that is relevant for large organizations where you have quite a lot of different segments that you can address, and how Propagator would be installed in order to find what happens over there. So let's start with the next slide, which is why we do it. So basically, when we're talking about some adversary, then normally anyone who tries to go in would not end up by staying on the entry point, but rather would try to go and propagate within the network in the deepest way possible. So that's, first of all, the classic scenario that we're trying to simulate over here. Of course, when we get those results that Shelley was describing, like the finding and so on, we would be happy to see also how those are being mapped to different subnets, different segments, so that in some cases, for example, the risks on different segments could be different. Some segments are more protected, some others are more vulnerable to attacks. So that's another good reason to try and look at that from the perspective of multiple hops. And of course, the expectation is to try and cover as much as possible from your networks, and therefore we would not stop at the first segment, but try to propagate further on. So that's the why. Now let's talk about the how. So basically, what we're doing when we're running those attacks, as Tomer mentioned earlier, we are focusing on collecting as much data possible from the hosts, and those including not just items or data elements that are related to our ability to propagate, but also to what's hiding behind that specific segment. For example, looking for how those hosts are communicating with other segments using different aspects, like looking into their ARP tables, looking into different other points where you could find that information. And then, of course, making the lateral move based on that specific knowledge that we've collected. When we move to a host on a different subnet, the first thing that we would do is to install a new propagator. That propagator would be acting as a new patient zero on that new segment. And this way we move from one hop to another, installing more and more propagators, and each of those are repeating those different classic attacks in order to, first of all, understand what happens within that pond, within that specific segment, and also trying to look outwards and see whether we can make the next jump to the next segment. So all of those different elements would be shown on the map, and we'll see that in a second. Lastly, keep in mind that when we're doing that, we are strongly focused also on safety and efficiency. So we're making sure that you can control how that test behaves, both with regard to the time that it would be running. You can select the test to end up after half an hour, after 12 hours, 24, and so on. And of course, the longer you give that test time to try and propagate, the more capabilities that could be leveraged on the way. For example, we've mentioned the password cracking. So of course, not every password could be easily cracked. Therefore, the length or the duration of the test could be impacting also our ability to crack something, and also, of course, the ability to listen to the communication within hosts on that subnet is another scenario like that, and so on. Okay, so that's with regard to one way to control that, which is time-based. Another way is by number of subnets. So you can say, okay, in test A, I would like to focus only on the first 2-3 subnets that an attacker could possibly be attacking, and later on successive tests to continue from that point on and define some neural ranges of subnets to address and so on. So basically, we make sure that this is controlled, and we also avoid repeating different attacks in a way that is not effective, focusing on real impactful combinations so that each run on a different subnet would be as effective and promising as the previous ones. So now let's look on the next slide and see some of the screenshots that are already supported for those different subnets. The multi-hop project is something that was introduced in the previous quarter, Q2, and we're also planning to, of course, expand it and enhance it with more capabilities during the next quarters as well. What you see over here is a way we present different subnets. On each subnet, you see what hosts are actually placing that subnet. You can also see some indication as to what EDRs are or security controls are associated with different hosts. And lastly, we can also see the different ways those two subnets could be connected and how we propagate it from one subnet to another. Lastly, when we look on the right side in the red box, you can see here a zoom in where we show that normally we color each of those different hosts in a different way. Some colors, like the green one over here, are showing or reflecting protected hosts, which are hosts that we've tried to actually propagate and compromise, but did not succeed. So those would be, for example, in green. Others would be shown in other colors that will be reflecting different statuses. For example, those we managed to propagate to would be in red, to compromise would be in red, and so on and so on. Next slide. So Shelley was showing earlier the way we see findings within our system. Once we support the multi-hop, what you see over here is the fact that you could go into the finding screen and also have a zoom based on certain subnets. So you can select a subnet and see what findings are related to that specific subnet. The reason for that is, as I said before, sometimes you would like to start somewhere, and instead of just collecting all the data and trying to figure out where to start from, you could say, okay, I'll start with the first subnet. Let's see what I need to fix and remediate over here in order to prevent that lateral attack on the next test run, for example, and then go to subnet number 2 and to subnet number 3, and so on and so on. So that gives you the focus that you don't need when you run on a single subnet, but is very helpful when you run on multiple ones. Next one. So one additional capabilities that we are planning to integrate soon is the propagate test observation. This is actually an AI-generated observation based on all the information that we've been covering and discussing in that session today. Imagine that we can take all those different aspects and discuss it with our Gen AI model, and then come back to you with some clear story that would be telling you what exactly happened on that specific test. So instead of just viewing the important stats as we've seen earlier, or the important findings, you can also read out through that kind of a test, see what specific findings we found, what are the most vulnerable assets, what hosts, for example, we need to focus on, and what hosts were actually found to be pretty much protected. And there are also recommendations. What would be your next steps, long-term, short-term, and so on. So a lot of valuable information would be provided in this specific tab, which is about test observations. So that's about what we are started offering and planning to even further enhance in the coming versions. If you have any questions about that or about any of the previous items, I think, Francisco, that this is the time for that, right?
Yep, that's right. So I know some of you have been asking questions in the chat. That's great. We're trying to get to as many of those as possible. But if you feel like you want to come off mute and you want to speak, just raise your hand and we'll allow you to, I think, somehow hear in the controls to chime in via voice. Yeah, so what local managers are supported? It's I understand Bitwarden, LastPass. Anybody else help me out on these? Ryan, thumbs up if one of those two works for you.
Tomer, can you also go over those the list of supported password managers?
I'm gonna take this one. So we support, it's not exactly supporting, it's more like targeting. I suppose that's what your question was. So we target the LastPass. We target Bitwarden, and we target like there are also the browser password managers, but they're like not local. But we also do target the 1Password password manager. So yeah, and of course all the browsers.
Ryan or Ryans. Hopefully that works for you. See, you've got us matched, almost outnumbered. All right, so I'm thank you. So just curious, is there anything you know, for the independence that maybe is needs some additional clarity potentially to run propagating from environments? Hey, Tomer, what do you need to- Okay, there we go. Yeah, so just checking to see if there's you know, if there's anything that you guys need to support testing in your environment, anything else that you're curious about that we haven't discussed here. Feel free to chime in. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions, so yeah, Cameron, if you want to take us out.
Yes, sir. We want to thank you guys for attending. As I said, these are quarterly, so we look forward to doing more of these. So Francisco, can you just advance to that last slide as our call to action? Thank you. All right. So again, just to wrap, integrating, validate, and propagate together. You've got comprehensive security posture and leverage static and dynamic testing. We want you guys to use this and flex it. We're super excited about the future together, but by using both propagate and validate together. One-on-one sessions are available through your TAM. We will also be putting this out in our community. There is video content added to the SafeBreach Academy. So we encourage you guys to go to the Academy, especially for new practitioners and operators. It's a high-level area that you can get familiar with both Propagate and Validate. At the end of this, there'll be a Zoom survey to everybody that attended. We look forward to hearing feedback and looking forward to launching more in the future of these exact same sessions with different content to help enable you guys to be successful with our platform. Again, I'd like to thank all the panelists today and all the attendees. We really do appreciate you guys being customers and your participation in the session today. So thank you all. Hope have a great day. This will be posted to our community if you wanted to have a recap or if you have other team members that might be interested in the content that we presented today. Take care, everybody, and have a great day.